Welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm going to say that has been a very crazy, emotional week, at least for me. And I'd like to explain a little bit about it, and it's going to end with an apology. And in the course of that, I think we might hopefully enlighten a few people. Well, bottom line for this week is I lost it on my Facebook this week. It started with, as most of you guys already know, I've put a film out called The Anatomy of a Great Deception, which was a very, let's call it a 101 course on 9/11. Very, I consider, basic stuff. And it's been out there now for over a year, and as much as I'd like for people to purchase it, it's free all over the internet. And I had a friend, an old friend from high school, who's in my Facebook group, which has a few thousand people in it. And he apparently had seen, there's a video that just came out a few weeks ago of a guy that claimed to debunk all 9/11 conspiracy theorists because he stuck a half-inch metal bar into, some hot iron smelting pot of some sort, pulled it out, bent the bar, and simply said, essentially, see, fire does melt steel. And this video went viral, which of course is what the media wanted to say, because they've been... Sorry about that. So this video came out, and the mainstream media ran with it, saying that this overall gene-wearing yokel disproved all these conspiracy theorists about 9/11. They ran the headline everywhere. And apparently my friend, who I'll call Eric B., saw it. And he made a comment to me. It was a very nice comment. And he said, I would never tell anyone what to think or what to believe. But he said, can you address the claims of what this overall wearing yokel said? He didn't call him that. That's just how I'm referencing him. So I answered my friend Eric. And then my friend Eric came back with a few other basic questions. And it started to occur to me that he hadn't even seen my film. And I actually asked him, all these questions you're asking are very easily identifiable. We addressed all of them in the film. Have you seen the film yet? And he said no. And that actually, it got me a little bit upset. Because one thing I've come to learn is, literally, the devil is in the details. And if you're going to try and figure out what's happening in this world by listening to a couple of snippets on mainstream media, or even listening to mainstream media in the first place, you'll never know. You will. The mainstream media does not exist to inform. It actually exists to manage and suppress. The further you look into that, it becomes apparent, but I'm not here to prove that today. My point is I got upset. Not at my friend Eric, because there were some other comments from people that, sort of agreed, saying, essentially, oh, how does it feel to have all that work wasted when this one guy in 5 seconds proved you wrong? And this is what's so difficult and what we're up against. See, guys like that, that is not a real American. This is not a guy that's like, I'm going to go disprove 9/11 because I believe in the official story. These people are part of an organized counterintelligence operation. I know it's not easy to believe, but believe me, when you see the evidence of it, I'll be able to prove that down the road. And it has become apparent to me that I think there's as much resources put into some of these famous events, put into suppressing the truth afterward, as much resources put into pulling them off in the first place. So I sort of lost it on Facebook, and I did it like this. Now here was a guy that had not bothered to watch a film that's 90 minutes, that is now, I think it's been viewed 24 million times, and people have told me that it's something that has helped begin to open their eyes. And what I was noticing is that people weren't even many people, the ones that are still fooled, are the ones that wouldn't even invest the time to look into these things. So I decided to break my own script a little bit and go off topic. Now you have to understand, when you've been inside of this, you start to see many parallels and many links between events. And the same way a crime investigator sees patterns in different crimes, he can start to create a profile. So I jumped the gun a little bit, and without the foundation, I started to put up pictures of what are called crisis actors. These are people that literally play roles. They play roles as witnesses to events. They'll pretend to be parents in an event like a Sandy Hook. And I put up a bunch of them because they're very easy to spot. It's something you can see with your own eye. And I was simply trying to get the message across that they're messing with your head. They are literally, when I say they, the mainstream media, and I should say the people that control the mainstream media, they don't want you to know the truth because they're the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes. So I put up some pictures that were just simple, easy to understand. I put up one picture of a guy named Nick Voigt. I don't even know how you pronounce his last name, and I don't really care. He was famous because we've all seen him. He's the guy that had the blown-off legs at the Boston bombing. And we all looked at that and said, oh, what a terrible event. This guy lost his legs, and you literally can see photographs of his femur cut off and sticking out of his very gruesome photograph. Now the funny thing is, if you look into that guy, he didn't lose his legs at the Boston bombing. He lost them in Afghanistan 2 years earlier, and there's clear picture evidence of that. It's in his military record. Yet here the media was presenting him as having lost legs in this bombing in Boston. I put that picture up. There was another picture I put up. It's of the Denver shooter. We all know the guy, the Joker, the one with the orange hair. I put up a photograph showing that the woman that plays his lawyer also plays the mother of a Sandy Hook child, which is either an incredible coincidence or it's a clue to the fact that we are looking at staged events. I put up another picture, one of Dawn Hopsprung. She was the principal in Sandy Hook, and she was killed, quote unquote, by Adam Lanza. 4 months later, she was a witness at the Boston bombing. You can see both CNN did a report on her as the principal of Sandy Hook. 4 months later, ABC used her as a witness to the Boston bombing. I put up another picture, one of Dick Scobie. Dick Scobie was the commander of the Challenger space shuttle mission in 1986. Now, we all saw that space shuttle blow up on television. The sad truth is, or maybe not sad for the parents of these folks, but the astronauts that we were told died in that accident, sorry to say, folks, they did not die in that accident. It was a staged accident. Now, I would suggest to get into the motivation for why someone would do that. That is so complex, I've got to save that for another show. That's its own topic. But I will say this. Don't use a lack of understanding of what the motivation could be to keep you from looking. Let's at least see the evidence, see the patterns of these crimes. So I did. I put up the picture of Dick Scobie because there's another Dick Scobie who has the same face as the Dick Scobie that died, who's alive today and owns a business somewhere in America. It's easy enough to look at. I included also a picture of the entire Challenger crew because every one of them survived. 4 of them continued using their original names or supplanted their middle name with their first name and continued living their life. 2 of them grew twin brothers. And if you look at the 1986 bios of the astronauts that were on that mission, for some reason those twin brothers were not mentioned as family members back then. I suspect, again, it's the same person. They just went a little further than using a middle name. They created a twin brother. I know it's hard to understand how that could happen. How could people around these folks that were aware of the Challenger mission, for instance, not report them? Well, the thing is that they do. But you'll never hear about that on the media. And so Joe Blow, that happens to work alongside or see Dick Scobie in modern day, tells a story. No one makes anything of it. I don't know what Dick Scobie said to this guy. He may have said, oh, it's just a coincidence. I get it all the time. I have no idea. But the story is quashed right there. Yet the reality is, we go on believing that that crew died, yet they didn't. If you go look on my Facebook page, and I think you can get to my Facebook page under my name, David Hooper, or look for The Anatomy of a Great Deception, you can go see the photos for yourself, and you don't need to go to my Facebook page. The things I'm talking about, you can type them into Google, type them into YouTube, type them in and just watch a lot of documentaries. Stop trusting that mainstream media. What I would trust is the legion of alternative media, which is made up of 1,000 individuals that are not bought, they're not paid for, they have not sold their souls, they're just honest people reporting a story. And when you have 999 independent people telling you one thing, but you only have 1 or 2 telling you something completely outlandish, and that's the story that makes it to the mainstream media, you'll begin to ask yourself some questions. You'll begin to open your eyes, wake up, whatever term you want to use. So one of my favorite ones that I put up, because he was in my film, he's famously known as the Harley guy. Now in my film, a guy wearing a Harley t-shirt was interviewed. And in the interview, although he was standing a few miles from ground zero, he was able to give a detailed engineering and architectural analysis of how these fires melted the steel in the buildings. They were so intense that he was able to observe that he saw the steel melting, and that's what caused the buildings to fall, and you'll see it in my film. I always thought that was odd, because how could it would take scientists quite a bit longer to even test it properly, yet the idea that's planted into the heads of people watching on that day, while we're full of emotion, and when an event is presented to you in an emotional state, you you code it into your memory differently. It's I'll say embedded more deeply. Anyhow, the only part I was able to show you in the film was, or the only part I chose to show you in the film, was his on-air interview where he was helping shape the story. That was the only part I was ready to show in that film, The Anatomy of a Great Deception. Now, what I could not show you, or did not show you because I just wasn't ready, was that if you look in that scene, and it's at the 77-minute mark of my film, 1 hour and 17 minutes in, you'll notice that there's a black guy wearing a black suit standing in between the interviewer and the Harley guy. And he is almost burning a hole with his eyes through the interviewee, Harley guy. Now, what's off camera, and will appear in an upcoming film, was the interchange that was caught between this government agent, the interviewer, and the interviewee. And it's very obvious that this agent, wearing an earpiece, was scripting the scene, whispering into the interviewer's ear. He was obviously upset because the interviewer had gone outside of his bounds and had done a few things that revealed the hoaxiness of this. And he was upset with Harley Guy as well, said a few things to Harley Guy in his ear, and then they reshot the interview. And that's what appeared on television. That's what I showed in my film. Now, the reason I put Harley Guy up as a crisis actor is because, about 15 or so, or 10 years later, Harley Guy happens to show up at the LAX shooting. When you start to see that these common fabricated witnesses appear in different places, it touches your heart. The sister of James Foley, who was, quote-unquote, beheaded by Islamic terrorists, even though it was not done on a beach, as was presented to us. It was done in a studio with a green screen. And again, if you go look that up, just type those names up into YouTube, James Foley, beheaded, green screen, and watch a bunch of videos. You'll know. She also played the role of a family member of someone that died at Sandy Hook. And of course, not of course, but if you only look at what the mainstream media shows you, you don't see the fact that she's laughing off camera prior to each of these interviews, which is an astonishing human reaction for someone that's gone through, supposedly, 2 incredible tragedies, life-altering ones at that. Here I was, a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist who'd made a compelling case, and my name is associated with 9/11 truth, rightfully so. And I knew what I was doing at the time, because I will show how all of these events are related, and they're actually pulled off by the exact same evil cabal. And so in my heart, I already know these events are related, but I've not been able to lay that foundation in an organized way like I was able to do in my film. So to the world, it appeared as if, oh boy, this guy that is a 9/11 guy, all of a sudden, he's now talking about the Boston bombings, he's talking about Sandy Hook, he's talking about NASA, and from a perspective of 10 years ago, it'd be easier to write someone like that off, because I'm like, okay, if they, they're going to believe all. I could understand if there's maybe one conspiracy out there, but if you're going to claim that all these things are conspiracies, I'm going to start to think, well, you're the type of person that is looking for trouble. And that's why in my early days of research, I could never understand why the people that were fighting for 9/11 truth would also have references to aliens and the Bilderbergers and the Federal Reserve, all these seemingly unconnected institutions and ideas. And I actually was upset because I thought that was muddying the waters of truth. Well, little what I would come to find out later is that these guys knew what they were talking about. I just didn't understand it yet. See, these events are related on many levels. But for the fact that they use crisis actors alone, these events are related. 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, and hundreds, literally hundreds of other events that the news portrays in unison, in a coordinated fashion, which shape our views. And those views end up turning into calls to congressmen, and that turns into laws that are passed, and that turns into the erosion of our freedoms. All these seemingly unrelated events are actually, in my opinion, related, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. One of the things that you can, I've spent now 5-6 years immersed in looking at what's really happening in our world, and I've done it full time. This is what I do for a living. I do not have some day job that I go to and then I do this part time. Literally from about the time I wake up until about the time I fall asleep, I'm either researching, writing, or speaking. So I'm privy to a lot of information that perhaps a lot of people haven't seen. And another thing, by putting myself out there, I've invited, well, I didn't invite them, but by putting myself out there, it's an implicit invitation where, let's say that elements from inside of our government that see this veil that is being thrown over the people, and are they themselves concerned about it, have approached me to help guide me, or perhaps also send me on a wild goose chase too. That is not lost on me. Having shown things to me which, it's almost like a deep throat relationship if you ever saw the movie All the President's Men, which I highly recommend for anybody. Anyhow, all these events have astonishing similarities, too many to name. They use crisis actors. The media announces events too early. For instance, the famous announcement of World Trade Center 7 collapsing before it collapsed. The Sandy Hook EMS and police arriving prior to the 911 call from Sandy Hook. The fact that for 9/11, FEMA was already there prior to 9/11. Details of events announced too early, such as 26 children killed before any coroner or police officer had been able to even enter the school. They were already telling the story as a historical fact. There seems to always be a single face that is associated to these crimes, whether it's JFK or 9/11 or Oklahoma City or the Boston bombing or Sandy Hook. I mean, it's either, we know them as Bin Laden and Adam Lanza and the Tsarnaev character and Oswald and Timothy McVeigh. And then you start to look at the people that get essentially blamed for these horrific crimes, and they all either have a past history with one of our intelligence agencies, or it seems that their identity was created out of thin air by one of our intelligence agencies. This is a radio show, so we only get to use one of our senses, hearing. We have other senses. The things that I mention on here, I hope you go look them up. That is my goal. It's going to be hard for it to touch your heart by me just talking. I'll guide you and point you in the right direction. but it really means nothing unless you go get the answers with your own eyes. So, here we are, all of a sudden. I'm known as a 9/11 truth guy. They consider me a leader in the 9/11 truth movement. And out of the blue, I'm now talking about all these other events. And there were a couple of Facebookers in my group that came out of nowhere. Well, I shouldn't say came out of nowhere, because I was already familiar with them from things that had happened in the past, which were interesting. And I'll even tell you their names, their Facebook names at least. Now, the first one is a user by the name of Cal Amiot. The second is a Facebook user by the name of Ken Doc, D-O-C, Ken Doc 2, as in like World War II. Both of these guys came out and started saying things such as, there is absolutely no relation between 9/11 and Sandy Hook. David Hooper has disgraced himself. He's embarrassed the movement. Do not look into Sandy Hook. You're wasting your time. Now, I've come across these types before. These are not natural people looking for answers. These are what are called disinfo agents. And yes, folks, they are very, very real. Trust me. The powers that be that go to this, and I don't know what, we all believe in at least one conspiracy, and I don't care what it is. I've got banker buddies that believe in Bigfoot. I've got other friends that think aliens are real. I've put my name on 9/11. I'm sure we've all got something. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that there is a type of disinformation agent which will enter and get right on top of a particular topic. And both Cal and Ken, Cal Amiot and Ken Doc, they're known as high-level Alright, where was I? Disinfo agents. So, let's understand something. If the powers that be are going to go to the trouble of pulling off these fake events to shape our minds, literally, you don't think they will also, if they've got the balls to do something bold and lie through their teeth as they do it, you don't think they've made provisions to keep that lie going after the fact? Of course they have. And that's where disinfo agents come in. Now, these people work inside of our intelligence community. There are a couple of million top secret, which is actually not a very high level of security, but there are a couple of million top secret couple million people with a top secret classification in this country. Couple of million. They're all over the internet. They're on Facebook. They're on all social media. They're in our news. They're all over the place. We're talking about a massive operation that would boggle the mind. The size of it is one of the things that helps keep it hidden. It's so big, it's hard for people to understand it. So I'm going to, later in another show, I'm going to break down the types of disinfo agents. There are some that work the front gates of an event, and I call these the nothing to see here guys. And these are people that basically say, oh, if you think 9/11's a false flag, you're crazy, you're insane, you're a conspiracy nut. So that's the nothing to see here guys. Now there's another type of disinfo agent, and that's what I call the pen keepers. That is, they keep everybody in a pen. So if you do end up figuring out 9/11 is a false flag, there are disinfo agents that actually get out in front of the 9/11 event. They'll host, as counterintuitive as this might seem, they will host Facebook pages and websites, and they will hammer home 9/11 truth, it was a false flag. However, and they get credibility by doing that. So people inside the 9/11 truth community begin to trust them. However, they're pen keepers. And what does that mean? They don't want you out of the pen, meaning they really exist to keep you from linking up or associating other events with 9/11. Because another layer of protection of the truth is that you do not put the big picture together. Now, these guys were very easy to identify. I've run across folks like this a lot. And they reveal themselves pretty quickly in the way that they came out doing the old name calling, Dave has gone crazy, yada, 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 yada. And he's disgraced the 9/11 community, and they both went on to say that, oh, poor Dave, he's lost it, too bad that we've associated ourselves with him, because now he's talking about Sandy Hook and NASA and things of that nature. And what these guys do, and it works, even if you're enlightened enough to understand 9/11, I see people continue to fall into the same trap that they were once in prior to 9/11. The same people that are trying to wake up their friends and can't get their friends' eyes open enough, they themselves do not have their eyes open enough, because they will again listen to what one person says, which I always say, never listen to any one person other than yourself. And so in the course of this week, it appears that I upset half of the 9/11 community, who were upset that I, quote-unquote, dirtied it by associating 9/11 with other events. The other half of the 9/11 community was cheering me on because I am rightfully so linking up events that are absolutely related. So how did I handle Ken Dock and Cal Amiot? And I know if anyone is anywhere inside of the truth of 9/11, they've may be familiar with the names of these guys. Please understand, these are disinfo agents. They exist to control what those that have already woken up to 9/11 do. They don't want you to go. If you've gone that far, okay, stay in that pen. Do not open it wide. Don't try. Do not let. Their job is to keep people from seeing the bigger picture. So how do I handle folks like that? I do to them what the mainstream media does to the truth, and that is I block them. And that is what I would suggest you do. They are not there to help us see the truth. Now, I'm not saying block everyone that disagrees with you. I would never do that. And my friend Eric, who I referenced earlier, I did not block him. He's still in my group. I welcome intelligent discourse. I welcome questions. I welcome curiosity. But if you're going to reveal yourself by turning into name calling, whether you really are a disinfo agent or just a scared child not wanting to accept what's being shown to you, then the forums we're creating aren't the place for you. So my advice to anyone that has a forum of that nature, don't be tricked into them pulling on your heartstrings and saying, oh, are you afraid? Is that how you handle the truth? You block people that have a differing opinion? Don't get sucked into that. Just block them. But don't block people that differ in opinion if they're reasonable, if they're trying to get at the truth. So I'm laying that down now, and I'm gonna suggest that as a method of our truth, our search for truth, the MO, the modus operandi of how we handle these guys going forward. Whenever you see anyone telling you to believe something or telling you not to look at something, Ignore them. Please ignore them. Get your own answers. Do it with your own eyes. If we are going to let anyone tell us what to believe about anything, we're setting ourselves up for failure. This is part of the spiritual war we're in, and it's literally, I know this might not make sense right now, but literally the outcome of your soul is potentially linked to what your understanding is of these events. That will become clearer as time goes on. So there is something I do want to apologize about. And that is, because when I was on Facebook this week, I lost it, like I said. And I was not any one person. I guess I was yelling at the whole world. Yelling, all right, dummies. And I was being very sarcastic in the posts that I'd made. For instance, our friend who lost his legs in Afghanistan, I wrote about it as, it was a miracle that he grew his legs back so that he could lose them yet again. Most people never lose one leg. He's lost 4. Making jokes like that, trying to get people to, basically I was venting is what I was doing. And so I'm not apologizing for introducing other events as I begin to make the case for why these are related and why we need to look at all of them, not just 9/11. What I do apologize for is the way I handled it, because I turned into a 5-year-old little baby, and that's not who I am, at least not all the time. Just sometimes. So I apologize for that because I got a little bit unprofessional. I also believe in transparency. So I'm not taking any of those posts down. You can read what I wrote. I stand behind the evidence and information in them, but I'm not proud of myself about the way I presented them. And all I can say is to anyone whose feelings I may have hurt or offended, I am sorry. To the 9/11 community that might be upset that I've introduced new issues beyond 9/11, I am sorry that I am not sorry, if that makes sense. What I instead would say is I implore you to open your eyes further. And to the other half of the 9/11 community that is very happy that I am becoming a voice of someone to show this bigger picture, I'm simply going to say that I will continue along that path. And if we lose you along the way, I spent a long time having an inner struggle because I wanted to. There was a line in it. Who's the guy on Late Night that I like so much who coined that term, truthiness? See, I knew something was going to happen when I started talking about 9/11. I was going to make some people uncomfortable. And another way of saying that is I was going to lose some friends. I also knew that I'd gain some new ones. Nonetheless, change is stressful on we humans. And I'm a human, and I have feelings, and I don't like the fact that the work that, and I did not choose to do this, I really believe it chose me. I don't like the fact that I know I'm going to lose many important personal relationships as a byproduct of doing my job. And early on, I was negotiating with the truth, if you will. So what I mean by that is when I finally got enough courage to come out and talk about 9/11, I did that. And yes, I had a few friends that just didn't get it. just that, they did to me what I used to do to people, which was kind of do the eye roll. I'd be afraid to be stuck alone with them because they might engage me in a conversation that's going to make me feel uncomfortable. I understood all that. I knew it was coming. But to me, exposing what's happening inside of our country and some of the things that are planned is just much more important than maintaining some of those friendships, as important as they are to me, and as much as I would love for them to stay, as much as I would love for me to be able to keep them. But I know that's not going to happen. What I'd originally intended to do with my upcoming film was introduce make my case like I did in the first film. Do it in organized fashion, have my ducks in a row, do a little research on what the main stumbling questions are going to be, and be able to preemptively answer those questions right in the film. And I guess my emotions got the better of me this week because I threw out all of the pictures of these crisis actors, which is clear visual proof that we're being played with. And I did it in the form of screaming out, "All right, all you dumb sheep, look at this, they're fooling you." And the message was not wrong, but the delivery was. So let's talk about 9/11 for a sec. Because 9/11 is a noble and vital cause. To understand it and to get to the bottom of it and to get it prosecuted is one of the most important things for this nation. But if we don't look at 9/11 in the bigger picture of things, we may as well not look into 9/11 at all. Let me explain. I love metaphors. I use them a lot in our films, and I think they help us look at complex issues. So let's take one right now. Let's say you're a teacher, and you've got a class. It's near the beginning of the school year. It's the fall, and it's a rainy day, and there's a quiz on this day, and the school also happens to have a half day. And one of your students, I'll just make up a name, Lisa, little Lisa, she calls in sick. Okay, happens all the time. It's not even on my radar screen as a teacher. It's just a byproduct of life. A few weeks later, and we're getting now into colder weather, and it's snowy. And also happens to be a quiz day. It's a full day at the school. And get a phone call from the family saying that they're snowed in, they're not going to be able to make it to school. As the teacher, I am still not thinking much of this. A few more weeks go by. We're now in the middle of winter. It's still snowy. There happens to be a test on this particular day, and our favorite little student, Lisa, calls in sick again. Well, now I'm going, because I find it, we're now pushing the edge of coincidence, because she seems, and when I called her as the teacher, she said that she wasn't able to come in because she had to watch her little brother because her mom had to go run errands. To which I just, the teacher would think to himself, okay, my eyebrows raised. There's a little concern. She's now missed 3 tests in a row. It could be bad weather, or maybe she's afraid of taking quizzes, or maybe it's just a coincidence. Another month passes. It's a sunny day, and it's a test day. This time, her mom calls in for her and says she's sick. Well, I've been a teacher a long time, let's say, and I know coincidence and statistics. I've observed life, and I I said to the mother, are you sure she's sick? And the mother gets very upset with the teacher, almost to the point where she feels offended. The teacher then takes a little time to calm the mother down and says, well, hang on, here's why I'm asking. And the teacher goes on, and they go to compare notes. That our favorite little student, Lisa, has now missed 4 tests in a row. And to this, the mother was surprised. Little Lisa's missed 4. She hasn't even missed 4 days of school. And the teacher said, well, yes, she has. The mother said, no, she hasn't. The teacher then goes day by day, gives her a date, says the reason. The mother pulls out her calendar. They compare notes. And it is only by comparing notes and comparing these different events and the similarities between them that they were able to arrive at what the obvious truth was, which was little Lisa is afraid of taking a quiz. Yet nowhere in this entire story did little Lisa say she was afraid of taking quizzes. Nowhere did the mother say little Lisa's afraid of taking quizzes. Yet by comparing these notes and doing a little research, the truth came to light. And it was a truth that wasn't even reverberated by anybody. So, to people that are inside of the 9/11 community, imagine if you were a detective working on a crime story, and let's say you're a detective in your hometown and there's been a murder, and a weird one at that, which with a lot of strange, you've seen other murders before, but this one was just strange. The victim's face was painted like a clown. There were certain things that the killer left on the victim's body. There were things that were released to the media, but there were some things that the investigator, like all good investigators do, kept to himself, something that he would keep to verify potential future witnesses. For instance, not mentioning that the killer also left a Post-it note on the kitchen saying, helter skelter, who cares? So, now if this investigator studied the hell out of that one event for the rest of his life, he's going to have a set of data. But without a second point, without a reference point, you can't make a direction of anything. Nothing gets pointed in the right direction. Now let's just say he's a closed-minded investigator, and he's already assumed that whoever did this crime could never have committed another crime, doesn't even bother to look for patterns he found in his hometown's crime with other homes. If he's a closed-minded investigator, we all know how far he's going to go. But let's say he's an open-minded investigator, and he does a little research, maybe makes a few phone calls, and he finds, holy cow, there are a string of victims that paint a clown face on their victims. He sees them going from city to city across the United States. He finds out information that others wouldn't be privy to, so that someone looking for glory or looking to get their 15 minutes of fame, who make up a story to get on the news, we've all seen it happen. If you all remember, quick sidebar, the Pepsi Cola, remember when they found a syringe can in the Pepsi Cola? Some woman in the Northwest first claimed it, and within a week there were over 100 claims of syringes in Pepsi Cola cans. And Pepsi executives were going, wait a minute. Now, for it to happen once, okay, we could understand how that might happen, but now we're getting reports of this from different distribution centers, different production facilities. which implies to us there would have to be a coordinated effort from within Pepsi to put syringes in Pepsi cans. There were also 100 lawsuits filed with these claims. So they went back to the first woman, and they scrutinized her story very closely. And what you can see is that woman right at the checkout of the store, because she made the claim in front of the cashier. You can see her almost like a magician shoving that syringe into the Pepsi can. She then makes this claim. She gets a little bit famous. Next thing you know, there are a bunch of other people mimicking her. So investigators are not dumb to this fact of human nature, and that's why they'll often hold back a little element of the crime that the public does not know, so that anyone claiming to be a witness that calls in or is giving quote-unquote new information, they're going to need to have some sort of knowledge of this hidden piece of information. It's sort of like a key. It's a passcode. It gives someone endorsement. It gives them credibility. So back to our metaphor of the open-minded crime investigator who's actually considered the possibility that this was not a standalone event. He goes and finds out that there is a string of victims with their faces painted like a clown, and by doing a little extra research and vetting some of these incidents, he finds out that there's also a post-it note, even though he never released that there's a post-it note with Helter Skelter written on. So, I don't know. This investigator, I would think, is starting to think, hey, we are seeing a pattern criminal committing a pattern crime. He now has an incredible wealth of additional information. He knows where this killer is traveling to. He sees that it seems that it's every 7 days on a Sunday when the crime is committed. The killer keeps purchasing new clown paint, and it's always the same brand. And by doing a little research, he finds out that, holy cow, there's a circus traveling that have the identical dates, stops in each town that these crimes were committed in, and the day after the circus closes is when the crime's committed, like clockwork. Now, do you think it would be a stretch for this investigator to figure out what town the circus is going to next, and maybe even be able to predict to the police commissioner of that said town, hey, there's going to be a crime in your town this week? Do you think an open-minded investigator might even be able to quote-unquote see into the future if he brings that sort of information into the fold and considers all possibilities? Now the police commissioner in the brand new town, and they've never had a crime in their town, is going to pat our investigator from another town halfway across the country on the back in a demeaning manner and say, oh, you know, Bill, Mr. Open-Minded, I really appreciate your concern, but we've got things under control here in, Elk Snout, California. That would be also a common reaction from the investigator. So far, I think everything would be acting calmly. And again, it wouldn't be until after the crime is committed, i.e. too late, that our naive Elk Snout commissioner realizes, holy cow, if I'd only taken him more seriously, maybe we could have even prevented this crime. And it's not until both commissioners get together, drive to the next city where the clown is going to be, and when you've got two people that are credible, that are seemingly not associated, all of a sudden, Commissioner in the third stop or in the next stop perhaps is going to listen a little bit more. Now, what I'm saying is that is exactly what is happening with 9/11. So if you look at 9/11 in a vacuum, and you do not consider the staggering amount of elements that are shared between events all the way from JFK to the Oklahoma City bombing to 9/11, all the way up to including events that are happening as recently as a few weeks ago, like the San Bernardino shooting. In fact, when the San Bernardino shooting happened, I turned to my family and said, "Oh, they'll find out it was an inside job. Don't worry." And a lot of people already know that. Now, that kind of thing sounds crazy to someone who's in a coma, someone who's asleep, someone whose eyes are closed. But if your eyes are open, you absolutely understand what they're talking about. So even to this day, those close to me, they'll still roll their eyes when I say, "Hey, I'm telling you, just wait a few weeks. You'll find out. The real witnesses will come out and you'll start to understand." My guess is that was yet another staged event. It had all the hallmarks and elements of the crime that couldn't be known coming out, things of that nature. Between all the events I've mentioned, we could do a whole show on what the common elements are. Start with crisis actors. Just start there. That's all you need to do. Then figure out, how is it that the media knew Building 7 was going to fall ahead of time? How did the media know about Sandy Hook before it happened? Remember that reporter that was shot, quote unquote, live on air in Virginia? How was it that her boyfriend sent out a condolence message about the memories he has for her 10 minutes before she died? Start to wake up and understand we're looking at the exact same machine, the exact same criminal, just conducting different crimes. And when you run across someone that's telling you, do not leave the pen, do not link these events up, it's crazy to even consider it, there's a little hint that A, you should go looking there, and B, you may have just run across a paid disinformation agent. You may also have just run across a regular person that is no different than our quote-unquote metaphorical closed-minded investigator who really does want to solve the crime, but because he's got preconceived notions about how the world works that are getting in the way of truth, he won't be able to figure it out, nor will you. If you stay inside, if you believe 9/11 was a false flag, which I do, anyone that's looked into it does, if you're going to stay in 9/11 and only 9/11, in my metaphor, you're the closed-minded investigator, and you'll never get to the bottom of it. It's not to say 9/11 is not a noble or vital cause, because it absolutely is. But if you can't see it in the grand scheme of things, what's the point? You'll have a much lower chance of actually solving it for yourself, and you'll certainly never see the big picture, and you will never be able to understand what might be coming our way. So if you can understand where I'm coming from, I do not apologize about introducing these events. If you do your own research, you'll understand that they are linked up. All right, everybody, welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. For the final portion of our show, I was going to tell you how my week ended for me on a really good note. So one of the things that upset me during this week is I got a phone call from my sister. And she's like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're crazy, Dave. You sound crazy. What are you doing linking up all of these events? And what are you doing calling everyone an idiot?" Now, even inside of my own family, yes, once they saw my 9/11 film, The Anatomy of a Great Deception, they could not deny 9/11. But even after that, as I've been discussing with them the correlation between all these events, I started getting the eye roll treatment, and have from even the people that I woke up, most of the people that I woke up to 9/11. Or I can't say most or less. I don't know these percentages, so I won't say that. Let's just say a bunch of the folks that woke up to 9/11 continued their own investigation to circle back to me a year later to tell me, "Dave, I get it. I see the whole thing." Some of the folks that I woke up to 9/11 have stayed in 9/11 believing that is the end-all, be-all of this quote-unquote, it's not a quote-unquote, let's just call it what it is, this conspiracy. And that actually was happening even inside my own family. So I want you to understand the sort of forces and brainwashing and mental barriers that we put up ourselves. And even I don't have a magic formula to get to my own sister or mother by saying something. What I found I need to do is put my story on paper, do it visually. This whole experiment, and let's call this radio program an experiment for me, is to see if audio-only information gets the job done. But that implies that we're in a partnership, which means I'll give you direction, I'll lay the framework, I will play the deep throat so that you can go get your own answers. I'm not going to tell you what to think of an event. I will always say, get your own answers. Back to my sister. She's pissed. And she's like, Dave, what are you doing? You're disgracing these Sandy Hook families. Well, she caught me on the wrong day because I was pissed too, and I was not in the mood to do the old hand-holding routine and gently getting someone to look into Sandy Hook. I just said, "Nancy," and I can say this to my sister, I would never say this to any other individual person because I love my sister and she's one of the smartest people I've ever known. I may say it to the general public, but I would never say this to hurt someone's feelings. My sister and I are impervious to hurting each other's feelings through a lifetime of sibling rivalry, and we absolutely love each other, but we've built up very thick skin, which I'm finding is coming in handy, especially in my current day job. And I will paraphrase what I said to her because I used much more colorful language. And I said, "Nancy, you're a big dummy. Sandy Hook absolutely is related to 9/11. And just go look up the crisis actors and don't talk to me again until you have. And I really don't care what you have to say about it because you don't know what you're talking about." Click. I hang up the phone. And I don't think she's going to look, because when that sort of thing has happened before, usually, that is, when I come at it from a perspective of anger and frustration, I realize I actually turn people off. And I didn't even care, because I felt like this type of work, what's inherent in it is you feel like you're spinning your wheels sometimes. But I will also say this, I got some wonderful feedback this week that tells me that if you're someone that is trying to expose the real truth, you're not spinning your wheels. It is working. And this may sound melodramatic, but I cannot emphasize this enough, are becoming aware of the relationship between these events. I should say it in reverse. The future of our nation rests on our ability to be able to understand these events together. And that might not make sense to people if you haven't put the picture together. But just the same way that our open-minded investigator knew where the killer was headed, the open-minded people that search for the truth, they know exactly what's in front of us. And it's not even hard to explain it. Now, if I were to come out and tell you right now, I will lose most of this audience who will just turn off the radio. And I'm not going to talk about what is happening in the future on this episode, because honestly, you can go figure that out for yourself, and it will mean so much more. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where I will be that guy, and I will be discussing that. And I know that's putting an incentive for someone to shut me up, which, that'd be fine. If, no, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Forget that whole tangent. Here's my point. I did not talk to my sister this week. Yesterday, she flies in for the holidays. And I've already got up my barriers, and I've got my blinders on because I'm just going to work, and I don't want to get slowed down by her telling me that I'm off base and that this, I'm really losing it and I'm embarrassing her and our family name, etc., etc. And actually what happened is she came in and said, Dave, well, you know what? I did end up looking into Sandy Hook. And she's like, oh my God, Dave, it's fake. She's like, she told me, she's like, Dave, the whole event was staged. Now, all I told her to do was look at crisis actors. And now she came back to me. She was talking about the real police commissioner in Sandy Hook that is filing lawsuits left and right. And hang on, I'll pull up his name in a second. She was telling me very important details of the case that are absolutely vital to understanding how it is related to other events. She said, Dave, that the school wasn't even a real school 1 month before the event. All of the families, or 10 of the families that had children at the school, all bought houses in that neighborhood on the exact same day a year earlier, each for $1. She's talking to this to me as if she's blown away by these ridiculous coincidences, which she then, in fact, realized they are not coincidences. She then said, Dave, they demolished the school and all the evidence, and the police were there before Adam Lanza, and there was never, like the video camera off the school was taken, just like they took the ones off the Pentagon. And detail after detail after detail, and now she's immersed in Sandy Hook. She actually did introduce me to a piece of information, which I thought, which I love, that I wasn't even aware of. But she brought up the fact that, Dave, do you know about that teacher that wrote the book, that wrote that Sandy Hook book and all of the comments on Amazon? To which I said to her, I actually know, I don't know what you're discussing. So I went onto Amazon to see what she was talking about. Now, the book in question is called Choosing Hope. It's a book by a writer named Caitlin Roig, Roig Debellis, Debellis. Now, this was a quote-unquote teacher at Sandy Hook who was on every mainstream media station. I can tell you about how hard it is to write a book. I'm sorry, but you don't just live through a tragedy like that and then all of a sudden, a few months later, have a book ready. That's a very emotional undertaking unless you're a professional writer and you understand what you're doing. I fully believe that she did not write that book. That book was in fact written for her and as part of her quote-unquote deal with the powers that be. She would receive the proceeds of that book, and it would be one of the ways that they would pay her. Sorry. All right, where was I? Oh, my sister and Amazon. So the book is called Choosing Hope. A lot of these crisis actors, you'll find out, have, for instance, like GoFundMe pages set up, and all of a sudden they'll be sent $1 million by the people of America, by the duped people of America. They literally stole your money. If you funded them, they stole your money. And that's one of the ways these guys get paid. So the media paraded our friend, Roig, I'll just call her Roig, paraded her around, and I'm sure she sold a whole bunch of copies of her book. But my sister kept harping on, Dave, the Amazon comments. So I went on to Amazon, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Let me read you some of the feedback. You know how we can all leave 1 to 5 stars on Amazon and then make a comment? Here's some of them. Don't fall for it. Here's another one. Sandy hoax author. Do not support. Waste of money. By the way, I'm not picking and choosing which to read. I'm reading these I'm reading from top of the page to bottom. Next one. Choosing cash. Moving forward with lies and deceit. So instead of calling the book Choosing Hope, she's saying this reader's like choosing cash. The next one is, this is nothing but lies and propaganda. The next one is just 1 star. Lies, 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 and more lies, all for money. The next one is, it sounds like Choosing Hope is a terrible book, even according to ... I won't get into the body of their message. The next message, total psyop publication. The next comment, how dare you play on further and more heartstrings of the American people who are so generous with their love and care. The next one, BS anti-control propaganda. The next one, if there is a God, she has not seen her darkest hours yet. The next one, the money grab of a treasonous sellout crisis actor. The next one, now here's your duped American. This is what a dummy, this is what someone that's fooled sounds like. Beautifully written and inspiring. The next one, better to Google Sandy Hook hoax and read as much. Oh, here comes another positive one. A story of a hero who saved the lives of 15 children, which I will add 15 children that never existed. Because one of the things my sister pointed out to me, which I already knew, is that all of these kids that were claimed to have been killed at Sandy Hook are actually all over our media. Something like 10 of them were in a Super Bowl show. A few of them went to the White House after Sandy Hook, and etc., and etc. I'll let you guys do the legwork on that. You get the picture. So why did that put me in a good mood? Because just maybe, in spite of what the media would have us believe, this country is starting to wake up. And let me tell you something. If the American people ever are on the same page and working towards a common goal, look out. There is, as lazy as we have become and as dumbed down as we have let ourselves become, I also know something else about this country. That when we put our minds to something, we can do anything. We turned the world on its head over the last several hundred years. We went out of nowhere to become a financial power. We won every single war we participated in until we got the Bible out of schools in 1963. Then we haven't won any since then. But in the immortal words of Bill Murray in what the heck's that movie? Where he plays the soldier that joins the army, and he's like, "We're 10-1." Stripes, thank you. Bill Murray in Stripes. This country, when it wants to, can do anything. We are the descendants of ass kickers. All right? It is in our DNA. If you live in this country, it means that either you, your parents, your grandparents, or your grandparents' parents, you get the picture, one of them had enough balls to leave their comfortable little, most likely European, little village or town or community to head to completely uncharted waters where a different language is spoken, where people are living off the land. We are the descendants of ass kickers. So let's stop being these rolled over little wimps that we have been. Let's open our eyes. Let's just face what the truth is, folks. People like this Roig girl, let's call her what she is. She's not a crisis actor. She's committing treason. Hopefully someday we're going to have that trial. And if you're a burgeoning crisis actor, or if you think there's something noble about doing that work for some paycheck, you better think again, folks. Or crisis actors, or whatever you want to call yourselves, evil, treasonous bastards. Because there may be a day where you are going to be really maybe stuck in a room with the real American people. And yeah, like one of the people on one of the comments on Amazon was, we are a generous and giving nation, but if you piss us off, watch out. And let this be a warning to the powers that be, because we are getting organized, and we are starting to see the big picture. And once that 100th monkey effect, look that one up, folks. The people I'm talking to know, they know what I'm referencing. Once that 100th monkey effect is in place, your party is over. We've got the internet. We've got access to the greatest library in human history. Things that those that came just before us did not have. Do you know how hard it has been to solve JFK without the internet? Oh, yes, by the way, JFK was solved. Is that a surprise to anybody? Oh, no, I know Peter Jennings and the rest of his lying buddies will get on and say, 50 years later, there is no credible evidence of a conspiracy. Like, I don't even know what he's thinking, because most of his audience knows that's total BS. So I don't know what straws they're still hanging on to, but that's still the unified message from the mainstream media. There were several shooter teams at the JFK shooting. I'm not going to reopen JFK. Too many guys have made a career of it. But these guys didn't have the luxury of the internet. Guys like Jim Mars, who conducted the research and who ultimately did the interview, where Jim Mars himself, after looking into JFK for the vast majority of his life and other conspiracies, believe me, he's had a lot of people come up to him and claim to be the shooter on the grassy knoll. And of course our mainstream media, you mentioned grassy knoll, there it is again. It's like saying alien. It's like saying Jesus, shut down. But here's the truth. the crime has been solved. No, no one was prosecuted. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that indicates he actually may have been the lone hero in the whole damn thing. Jim Marrs, again, a good investigator, holding back some information. He used that very principle on a man by the name of Mark Files. You want to find out who killed Kennedy? Go watch that interview. And in that interview, Jim Marrs does two things that vets Mark Files. He adds false information, which every other false witness just agreed to as if, yeah, that happened too. And from Jim Marrs' perspective, those witnesses disqualified themselves. That was one way to vet witnesses. He also withheld some things that only the shooter could have known. And he walked out of there saying to himself, now, no, there was not a trial. And if you're asking if, like, will the president or will Peter Jennings ever come out and say something like, hey, we solved JFK? No, they never will. You'll only be able to solve it for yourself. But if you look into it, JFK was shot by several different shooters, and the shooter that got the fatal headshot was a man named Mark Files. And I'll let Mark tell you about the gun he used, how he was involved, how his contact inside of the mafia was working for the CIA, how David Atlee Phillips was the CIA handler of Mark Files' mafia associate, how David Atlee Phillips was also the handler for Lee Harvey Oswald, how Mark Files had worked with Lee Harvey Oswald the week leading up to the shooting. Mark Files himself says Lee Harvey Oswald couldn't shoot a fly. There's no way that guy did his 3 shots from that. It's just fallacy, and people believe it. That's Mark Files talking. So I'm not here to reopen JFK. I'm sure many of you have looked into it. What I was trying to indicate is that it took a long, long time for the people to wake up to JFK. But what's happening now is people are waking up to Sandy Hook not 40 years after it happens, but 1 year, sometimes even months. And now we're starting to get so awake that there are a lot of people that are predicting what's going to come. I'd listen to them, listeners. I would listen to those folks. Even if it's just to discount it, at least plant the idea in your head of it being a possibility. So we have the luxury of the internet, the greatest library ever. Don't waste it. Because one thing I can tell you, like knowing where the clown's going to be, this internet, it's going to be shut down very, very soon. So you better learn as much as you can right now, because we're going to be lucky to be, well, I consider us lucky to have it today. Point is, I ended this week on a good note. The people are waking up, and for the powers that be that are always listening, you better hope, this is not my hope, but you better hope these people don't wake up. Because once they do, and all of a sudden they all get it, Mr. Rockefeller and Rothschild and Morgan and Warburg and Bush, and the list goes on and on and on, these Illuminati families, I think the people literally, this is where you will have to deal with an armed populace. And this is why they want to take away our guns, folks. Because they know that this is our last line of defense. But I would love to, I won't say it like that. It wouldn't surprise me to see the American people, at some point, someone will rise up out of them as a leader, and we're going to take this government back over, turn it back into the republic it was supposed to be, put the Constitution, which has been destroyed, along with the Bill of Rights, back into place in its original format as was intended. Either that is going to happen in a revolution, or we're going to lose. So it's time to start picking sides, because I can see the temperature of this country. It is through the rafters, and something's going to give soon. And my gut feeling, although they've never been touched, so they may not have reason to be scared. But man, if I were them, that is, the real rulers in Washington, I would be scared. Because we're getting close to that 100th monkey. And when that happens, the jig is up. Good night, everybody. This has been Down the Rabbit Hole with David Hooper. Have a great holiday. See you next week.
Journalists and broadcasters, ventriloquist dummies. Can't you see that they made us control slaves? Pay taxes but can't get our roads paid. Hitting potholes, assholes, fix the road. They're stealing our money right from under our nose. Extraterrestrials, they show UFOs. An alien invasion will be the next hoax. Right now it's terrorism, they control with fear. They poison your brain so you can't think clear. You got eyes but can't see, you got ears but can't hear. You're driving yourself off a cliff cause you won't steer. Cause you won't steer, cause you won't steer. You need to get control of the wheel, don't drive off. I hope you understand what's really going on. If you feel me, then you know why I'm crazy. So don't blame me for what you humans have made me. I blame everyone, every single person that feeds from the sun. Selfish people are so see-through, they just add to the fire of the evil. Radio frequency identifications, chip in your skin is the next equation. Mark of the beast, war on the streets, prepare for the ride, better hold on to your seats. What lies ahead, man, I don't even wanna know. Sometimes I wish I didn't know what I know. Anglo-American oil companies, neoconservatives take over the Middle East. Fake wars to make money, they drop the towers. Fake 9/11 through reptilian powers. Illuminati, I say it in every song till you learn what it is and you know what's going on. If you don't care about what I am telling you, you are just ignorant. There is no helping you. This is